We've had some great lectures today in our Operational Excellence Summit. I wasn't able to hear Patrick, but I was able to hear a number of the other presenters, and we had a huge variation in the topics that were discussed, from modeling to Jidoka to the Shingle model, behavior-based, to complexity management, which was fantastic, and then how to apply PFMEA, SIPOC processes in a merger and acquisition. So we have a lot of different things that we learned about, and I would like to go ahead and pass this over to these guys, and you have the opportunity now to ask a few questions. If you don't have any, I think I might be able to dream up one or two, but that's probably it. All righty. Please, questions? Yes, thank you.
I have a question for Patrick. The visual management, the digital that you guys use, that really, we have a lot of virtual employees, our looking actually remote employees that go to different sites and things like that. So wanted to see how you guys were transitioning from, I know you mentioned taking things off of your actual backs of cubicles and into your web-based visual management tool. Do you have those automatically, how do people see those? Do they have to actually log into something to get to them, or is there some way that they're there?
Yeah, so the IOVA tool is web-based, so any web browser on any device can get you in, and so they actually just click the link, or we have a specific web address that we go to, and then they're able to go to any of the rooms that they're in, if you will, associated with. So it's really easy for them. So to transfer a board in, usually half our boards are created from a PowerPoint anyways, so we just convert that to the right size, and it's just a PowerPoint image that gets created in as the board. Yes, it's been pretty simple. Actually,
a follow-up question too, if you don't mind. You've created that culture first before you went to that digital aspect.
Good question, yeah.
Do you, how would you either recommend for companies that either might not have that culture embedded first, but jump to digital? How would you advise keeping it top of mind, and also how do you keep it top of mind for the people that have gone digital to make sure that they're still behaving the way that they were before?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because you can build visual management in whatever medium you want, and it all depends on, are you changing your behaviors, right, or your company's culture and behaviors. So you could go straight to digital if you have really, really good coaches that are going to drive it home, because I could still make a mess of an electronic thing, just like I could make a mess of paper and have way too much complexity in there on the board. So it's easier for us because we already had that culture there. But even in parts of the companies, I don't have that culture. But I still want to roll this tool to them, because I still believe that they'll be able to get their work done more efficiently. And they might actually start having some of the right behaviors as a result of the tool. So it's a delicate balance. I'm more of an optimist than I think some might be.
I think we all.
Yeah. It's a good question.
Please. I have one on Jidoka.
Oh, yes, sure.
We've heard a few times, one of the things we're doing a lot of now is robotic process automation, AI. Any insights to Jidoka and how it applies to some of that technology and best practices around that?
True, robotics taken over. I think I heard one statistic I saw is like millions of jobs by 2040, 2050, it's going to be impact. I see not a threat. We just need to leverage the technology. We need to teach our more engineers, more scientists, and drive that. So we need to install them. We need to fix them ourselves. We need to teach our people to be friendly with them. Autonomous cars happening. I see a lot of plants with no autonomous AGVs, automated guided vehicles. I mean, the plants, the manufacturing, the added value, before, it looks like streets is going to have more vehicles autonomous before the plants, which is material handling, moving products from A to B. Non-value added, right guys? This is transportation. Where's the money? There are AGVs you can take We still have a lot of guys taking parts to A to B, and I see us, we need to really educate and leverage that technology and go friendship with it, not against it. We need to promote it and accelerate it, and our schools need to teach better science and technology. And 3D printing, like today, is another technology. We should leverage it, like in the high school and stuff. It's working well. My son is one of those programs. He's a science Olympiad competing for the state of Indiana. He went to the state championship. So it's important that we start, and I don't see it as a threat. And Jidoka is not so much about automation, but the smarter, I'll give you an example quickly. At Zimmer Biomed, I used to work with orthopedic. We check parts visually, vision, by naked eye. And you're looking at 10 microns, very small, you cannot see it. The hair is 40, 50 microns, all right? But vision system from Europe, Visual and Intec from Milan, we were able to integrate technology to vision system reflection. But you need to really know what's out there, leverage it, and transfer it to your own industry. Thank you.
Please.
So I've got a question on complexity management. How do you think that the model that you apply to high value customer and high complexity could be applied to disruptive innovation? So for categories of products that you've never launched into before, where you don't understand necessarily exactly what consumers want, where you don't have an established way of manufacturing or producing a product yet is completely novel and new and disruptive to the market. Can you apply that model to those types of products or not?
Yes, you can to a large extent. And I want to say not only the complexity management, but the entire lean innovation circle. And we have actually done that as a proof, because we wanted to know ourselves, do these methods work? So in 2011, our named patron, Günther Schuh, he is professor at the University in Aachen, decided with a colleague of his, we're going to build an electric car. Way out there for us, but they went and did a market analysis first and came to the conclusion, you know what, we don't need to try to build a Tesla, because the biggest need for electric cars is inner city, short distance, and fleet applications, like the US Postal Service. And then you apply the fail quickly, so you go through innovation cycles really quick. And we actually managed to put that car out, prototype after a year and a half, the car then after 3 years, and then we were at the point where the German Postal Service ordered, out of the collaboration that we had with them, 3,000 cars. But that order never came to pass because they purchased the entire company. So to answer your question, yes, if you want to go into a new market that you don't know much about, you have to look at really the boundary conditions in the market. You have to put that effort in order to determine what you need to do to be successful.
I'm not sure what you said.
Oh my God, do you have that on tape? Because that goes to America's Funniest Home Videos.
That's funny.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. That's a good answer.
I've never seen anybody insulted by a computer robot.
I know. You know what, my wife wouldn't be surprised.
Other questions? Yes, please.
My question is about Jidoka. One of the principles of Jidoka is to avoid operators monitoring the machine, you said.
Sorry, come again?
To avoid
Avoid operator.
operator monitoring the machine.
Machine, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We decouple basically the operator from a machine.
Exactly. So, what do you think about in the plant, the control rooms? You know, the control room in plant.
Okay, okay, control room. Each machine typically have a panel view, touch screens.
Exactly.
So those should be standardized. So we promote standardized panel view. So the machine at each side, it's the same. So when we cross-train operators, they never learn new how the e-stop, the on-off, the mastering. So the operators, they can move to other jobs and with little or no heavy on OJT training. So we standardize machines and the mastering of the machine. I'll talk maybe a little bit about that. But so tell me what you're trying.
So in my plant,
Yes.
there is a control room that is monitoring all the processes of the value chain.
Oh, I see. You have a master room, control room. I see.
Screen, and I have guys on it and use
Okay, I got you.
monitoring processes. So I'm just wondering, thinking about the principle of Jidoka. Am I doing it right? No. Because many guys that are.
I see. Almost like a cockpit, and you have all the gauges of the whole plant in that room.
In that room.
I love that war room, by the way. It looks like a war room. I've seen some of those.
Exactly.
Okay.
And if there's something wrong, he just takes the.
He pages somebody. He calls somebody.
Because
Watches
and
it. That's
it's
interesting.
not just making the right things, but it is right the way you piloted all the.
So our Jidoka is the machine itself. So what you're doing is you're controlling by human interaction somewhere. The machine is smart, it tells, so you got the detection, it's already telling somebody, but hopefully he reacts. But if he has 5, 10 things coming at him, you're still depending on the human, and we're saying the Jidoka, take it away, the human interaction. So he has to call somebody. This is not a true Jidoka. We need the machine and the operator there to recover quickly. So, I mean, I see benefit of what you're doing, but with us is right on the floor, right? No control tower. The people in the area solving their problem, and then they take care of it.
We have also this.
That's right.
We make a lot of member work and
Interesting.
but
Let's have a discussion after this, but this is interesting.
Yes.
I like to.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Was there another question? Yes.
I had one for Rick on Ocean.
Ocean County.
So, you know, we're believers in Ocean, but the executive leadership team might not even know the word. What's your advice to, you know, without me having the ability to knock on the CEO's door, to get some of that way of thinking started in the organization?
You know, it's interesting. When we introduced it at Bristol Myers, the good news was I had a president who believed firmly in this stuff, and he was actually well trained and used to run the old OpEx organization at Merck when he was there. So he helped flow it down through the organization. The tougher part is what you said, where now you've got to break through that C-level staff. And probably the best way to get there, and I'm assuming you got some kind of relationship that OpEx has that they're trying to buy into, is really start to highlight and maybe Jack actually with some interesting dashboard metrics start to show us how well is the strategy, the business driving understood throughout the organization. You know, everyone does end of the year surveys and the like. I've never seen questions around, do you understand the business vision and strategy? What are you doing to support that? Because that's what the Hoshin is all about, is it's got to start at the top. Then it flows down, and the cool part of a good Hoshin we call it catch ball, is as it flows down, you catch it at the next level. You may flow it back up. Because senior leaders, I'm sorry, they don't know everything and how their own business operates, and there's a tuning of that whole strategy. The other thing is, keep in mind, a good Hoshin strategy has a long-term vision and a short-term view. So you got a long-term vision of where you're trying to get as a company, but you measure every year against that long-term vision of what's the key things I have to deliver that now positions me to be successful in reaching that 3 or 5 year journey. A lot of companies, they're lucky to figure out what am I doing next week, let alone start to understand as you better start to look at yourself from a longer term. Doesn't say things won't change, right? In long term, I was an old GE guy under Welsh, and the right answer was, yeah, we had 3- and 5-year visions. By second year, we were changing them. But that's okay, because you had a process by which you could do that. So I think it starts either you've got the right advocate, or as OpEx leaders, what we can start to do is help the business see how what they think everyone knows isn't there. Take them on a good gimbal walk out on a plant floor and have them ask the operator, okay, do you know who your customer is? We had a product that actually cures hepatitis C. And we had pill production that was part of it. And the operator had no clue, they were punching these things out, that little pill, that single dosage, very expensive, would actually cure a patient. Because they didn't have, my job is to punch these things out and put them in a bag and get them out the door. So that's that mindset change you got to do. And I think the power of Hodgson Conner is it brings the floor all the way up into the C-suite. Plus, they need a little education too. Yeah.
So this one, I guess you kind of touched on it there, but also, Mark, originally the question was geared towards you. But in what you had mentioned of leveraging the wisdom of the crowd, with a lot of the new technology that's coming out nowadays, what do you think are the best ways that you can leverage getting the information from the bottom up to where you can have so many catch balls coming that essentially you can have a lot of better idea flow?
Yes, so I think that rather than saying, hey, what's the best technology, which I'll try and come back to, I want to start rather than saying, you've got to use some, because as I go around the conference and I listen to people still trying to work in spreadsheets and doing all those things, that's no good. We've got to use something, and following on from your last slide there on CBM, which is one of my cachets in consulting, in my performance consulting, which is to get something you never had, you've got to do something you never done. So if I'm going to do something I've never done, it doesn't matter which technology I choose, because anything is better than what I've got. So rather than trying to say, well, I'm not sure that SharePoint's as good as X, Y, Z, and they use Slack in development, and we go into this mess and they say, you know what, pick one and try it. And then to everything else that we know philosophically is that, and whichever we use is going to be wrong. But we're going to learn something, and let's plan to throw it out before we even put it in place, just like we would in a fail fast, because until we've put something in and tried it, see where it breaks down, it's cheaper than trying to do a full-blown RFP with every vendor coming in and telling you they can do that and make the tea, and it's cheaper and better. It comes, well, let's not bother. Let's just bring in something and see what. In some organisations, so for example in Signavio, when I went out to see what they were up to, they use Slack, which is an agile development approach, but it's used throughout the entire company. It's just been taken on board. No one asked anyone to it, but everyone said, hey, this is a really neat way of doing instant messaging privately. And they do everything around from marketing and everything else. But there was no push, it was entirely a pull that someone said, well, we'll use that elsewhere. Now, is it going to hit a creep point? I think so, because it's not the right tool and it was never designed to do what they're doing. But with what they're learning, strengths and weaknesses, they're going to be in a better position to buy the next one. So I think, don't bother looking for the best one. And for many of you, this is sacrilege. Okay, you're likely to be wall-to-wall Microsoft shops or IBM shops. Then why don't you start off with the one that your major technology vendor is going to give you for free? Right, because someone's going to, I don't care whether it's Google, Microsoft, just try it. And see what works and what doesn't. And just don't assume that you're putting something in for 5 to 10 years. I mean, on the IT stuff, I find it incredible. So, for example, some people today are still putting in SAP. Right? So you see how that's interesting? So let's hope I'm not talking about you guys when I finish off, because you might go, not us, not us. And so let's see where I'm going with this. So we're putting it in place. That's fantastic. So, how are you going to run SAP in the cloud? They go, well, we're not doing a cloud project. Well, that's funny, because most SAP projects take 5 to 7 years. Your infrastructure people are saying within 5 years we're going to do away with infrastructure, everything's going to be in the cloud. So why are we even thinking about starting a 7-year project based on today's technology that's not even going to exist in 7 years' time? How many people today say, well, we're developing for the Apple phone. Well, yeah, you know what, iOS won't be the dominating operating system on mobile phones in 7 years' time, will it? I mean, 10 years ago it didn't exist. 10 years' time, it won't exist again. So let's build to throw it away. Does it solve the problem now? Is it quick, simple? That's it, does what it does, and move on. So I hope that gives you some ideas, but anything's better than nothing if you haven't got it. And the way I tend to approach it, this is my personal view, is I go talking to those people, what do you use on your phone? Oh, I use X, Y, Z, right, I want one that's like them, because the one I don't want is the one the IT team recommend.
Yeah.
Because they're not consumers, right? We're talking about consumers, and particularly if I'm going to my ecosystem, hey, well, which one do my suppliers use? Which one do my customers? Oh, great, can I use those? I mean, in your organisations, how many of you have a department there that's probably monitoring stuff, or sorry, putting out the tweets, sponsored Facebook plugs? How many of you have got a listener that listens for when someone mentions you and then go back to your RPA thing, automatically says, yeah, I'm sorry you've had a bad experience. No. Suddenly Twitter's a broadcast mechanism. Well, I don't know about you, but I think it's a good idea to listen before we speak. But it's easy to broadcast. And the same goes with what we're doing, because if you put in that technology, I'm almost certain that someone says, oh, that's great, we can take the advice of Ricardo, and we won't just send the one email, we'll send 10 a day, constantly, because we've got this new mechanism, we can keep broadcasting. Whoa! Fantastic, no one's listening, but everyone's talking.
Can I make a comment? So I know I'm the modeling guy here, but I want to say that in my previous company, actually, I sound funny. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. You went that funny.
So in my previous company, I came from a hospital system that is a strong believer of lean, and pushing kind of is a big part of the organization as well. And the hospital went through a situation where they were at $50 to $70 million negative in terms of operating margin. So they were trying many different things to transform the hospital system. And one of the things that they came up with was, how do we leverage the ideas from the crowd, because they are the people who have all the ideas. So they came out with this system, what they call the idea boards. And basically every department has an idea board, literally a board, no technology, no IT involved. And there are process and coaches to help people understand how to use those boards. So the beginning was kind of difficult. However, as we moved in that journey, there were hundreds and hundreds of ideas that are generated by each department, whether it's nursing, physician group, research group, whatever it is. There are just lots and lots of ideas. And some of them are really good ideas that typically you won't even hear about, but because of that system, we're able to leverage those ideas. Yeah. I do want to also say that on that point, because we are trying to instill a behavioral change in people, there has to be some incentive structure built behind it. In that case, the incentive structure was right at the beginning, but it went in the wrong direction. Because when I left the organization, the incentive structure was the director of the department that has the most ideas will get some sort of bonus. So the directors kept pushing for more and more ideas. So then we saw that imbalance from lots of good ideas to lots of not so good ideas, because all they wanted to do was to capitalize on the incentive.
So just pick up on that. Has anyone ever read the book FedEx Delivers?
Yeah.
So they tell a great story there in how they fixed that. In the appraisal system, they no longer appraise you by the number of ideas. Instead, you're judged by the number of other people's ideas that you help bring to fruition.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Right. Because we've all got ideas, but actually until someone acts on them, they're no good. So actually reward the action on ideas and change the behavior.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks,
that was great. Let's give them a hand. Appreciate your support, and look forward to hearing what we have left in the conference. Thank you.
Versus a more direct-to-consumer industry. I'm just curious from an OpEx point of view, if there's changes you need to make in your strategy, whether it be cost versus growth or anything like that, what you guys might think about that.
You want to give a shot?
I'll go first.
Yep.
You're right. Like in the healthcare and pharma, you have to be careful. One of the biggest mistakes that I've ever seen in my life is when you do process improvement projects and you want to cut too much. That's one of the biggest mistakes that is going to get you on some problem with quality, compliance, or FDA, and then patient comes first. So basically, when we try to run any kind of project or initiative, we try to keep in mind that first, and then we start to put, like what he said, the roadmap on doing those projects. On the other side, I used to do OpEx in Univision, that is media broadcasting. Nobody's going to die. So trust me, the worst thing that can happen is that Jennifer Lopez is not going to look good. So, and in that kind of process, you do have a lot more wiggle. You know, you can test. You know, if I tweak here, what happened? But in pharma, I do not have that. I have to be very careful of what I do. And as I said, one of the biggest mistakes is you try to cut too much, and then what? You know, patient's going to go to the other side.
Okay. Maybe Neil, it's for you to see from a globally diverse company with a lot of complexity. What perspective?
I'll sort of qualify. I'll agree with you, but also qualify a little bit. One of the first things we get taught as continuous improvement professionals is question everything, right? So in that spirit, I would not assume just because you're in a regulated space that it's going to take 3 years. That's the way it is. Having said that, it is an external body and you have to comply with a lot of things. One example I'll give you to sort of counterintuitive is in an airline when we were looking at a regulated space in maintenance. It's heavily mandated, heavily regulated space. It took us a year from the time a manufacturer changed a technical spec on a part to when we can actually operationalize it in a flight plane. It took a year. They changed it for a particular reason. Could be making money, but more likely is it's a better product. Okay? We looked at that and said, well, it takes a year. I mean, those have to go through material specs, has to go through engineering, they got to accept it, they got to approve it, it has to go through workflow, technical writers get in, then materials management gets in, and then you get provision. We challenged that. We actually brought it down to 2 weeks. It was not a external, optically it was an external imposition, it takes a year. But I would hesitate to accept every one of those as a limiting step. Although I do agree with Angel that you have to be careful because it's a regulatory body, and then you also are sort of at the mercy of certain external provisions that you may not control.
And actually, I want to add that's excellent. Very happy to hear about the aerospace. I know a few friends here from the aerospace area, and have encountered the same thing, and was able to push it. But I want to impart a good catchphrase for you to learn in this. Probably the highest variation industry you have that's regulated is like a hospital. And we've all probably been through that experience or know someone has been. There's so much variation in that industry. But yet, when I work with hospitals, I tell them a magic sentence that seems to get past the hurdle, and it's this. Look, it's a highly variation business, and say, yes, it is, don't try to fight it, right? The patient comes in with a lot of variation, and it's always going to be that way. However, all the processes that we do, once that patient comes in with a lot of variation, patient should be the only one with the variation. They're all under your control. So no matter how technically and how regulated we are, right, we control it. The only thing we can't control is, hey, the customer wants this, but we can control all the processes that yield what the customers want. So if you always think the patient should be the only one with the variation, how we handle all variations that come in can certainly are within our control and should not have any variation on it. So that should help the regulated industries.
Maybe for us, if we can add is, we have 3 all-inclusive focus. It's employee engagement, it's operational excellence, and it's growing the business. It's not just focusing on growing the business without the other 2. It's not just engaging employees, it's not just operational excellence. So you need to drive the process of 3, and then you will have the results.
Good. Other question? Come on, guys.
They're free today.
Big opportunity here.
One of the presenters, and I don't know which presentation it was in, mentioned companies having a process council. Do you think that's a best practice to have some council out there evaluating on a quarterly basis?
I see a lot of body language on this one.
Well, you know, no, you want a council to design an airplane, or do you want engineers to do it? You know, so, and the reality of it is, we have to work with the hand we're dealt. So let's talk about best practices, that concept first of all. Best practice is probably good for the one particular company, so it's really not, let's go benchmark and find what the best practice. I don't know how that ever actually became popular, because each business is different. So it really should be,
It's a best practice for them, can I adopt? What principle do they use to come up with that practice? What was the principle behind it, not what is the practice? We don't seem to ask that question. What were they trying to accomplish? What principle do they use to do that? So it's like, why did they come up with a council? What was the principle they were trying to achieve? And then you might think, well, maybe they needed to because they're highly regulated and they had some weird things that they had to do. But in general, changing culture and implementation comes down to heavy education and being able to answer the question, why? When you heard me say, why do we put flow in? My answer was just to see when it stops. That realization is a game changer rather than answering, oh, for efficiency, productivity, and we want people to do one piece well. It just changes the way. So education is so much more powerful than councils. And a roadmap tells you to work on what. Here's a strategy, like, God, an implementation plan with a piece of yarn moving every week. And maybe the council can look at it and say, you guys are ahead of behind here. Somebody else thought.
I think there's two. The first answer is a big blip, but there's an old saying which says if you set a committee to design a racehorse, you get a camel. And I think that's a good starting point. So committees do not make great designers of process or great. But if you work like I do in a global business where the product absolutely has to be the same whether it comes out of Monterey or Shanghai or anywhere else, you do have to have global processes, and you do have to have processes by which people can apply actual forms. And people in each of those places have bright ideas how to improve those processes. And if they're going to improve those processes, then don't we want to make that sure that improvement happens in all those different places as well. So you have to have a mechanism by which you can do that. But whether it's a committee, and whether it's a group of, I'm from Billund and I'm here to help you, which is the kind of thing you get in there, that's not really where you want to be. It's a point where we use super users in our back-office processes. They have the discussions, right, we can improve this, shall we all do it? Yeah, let's do it, let's get on with it. That's basically much simpler, much quicker.
Let me spin it 180 degrees and tell you, if you have a process council, what's a good use for it? Let's do it that way, right? Because there is, so if you have a global company, one of the things a process council should say is, when I walk in the door, whether it's in Shanghai, India, or the United States, once I'm in there, I should not know where I am. That means all the color code, the 5S, the FIFO lanes, everything should be the same. So a council might decide, what's the safety color coding system we're going to use? What is the workstation visuals that should be employed? So you may have a global council that says, well, once I walk in the building, I don't even know what country I'm in because it all looks the same. So that's a good use of a council where they can help standardize the global standards to make sure every operation, I walk through the office, I want to see the same visuals to know I'm on time as I do. I don't want one company using a digital dashboard and another one having flags and bullseyes and stuff like that. So that could be the good use of a council.
I would just slightly add to that comment. So I would say, believe in experimenting. So if you believe that lean counseling can help you, try it to see if the results are showing or not. If the results are not there, try something else. So there are organizations for whom councils work. There are organizations for which councils do not work. So it is part of who you are. Right? There are things you do at home, may not work for me. There are things I do, may not work for you. But I think we run our homes pretty well. Reasonably so. So that's right. So we have a council, right? We have what we call as a Yammer infrastructure piece. We created a council of a certain number of people who are now helping us deploy lean globally. So I again like the idea where you can share practices you think works for you, right? But understanding the context of culture, which kind of is interesting when you go from Dubai, where there are certain regulations, both culturally and regulatory-wise, and then you go to India, Australia, and China, and back to US, you may not know everything, right? So you provide a framework through the council, but you always align that with certain objectives, strategic and tactical objectives. And you tell people, if you have a better way to do it, try it, right? Through different mechanisms. And if your way is better, then everybody else will pick it up. So you provide a framework for the council. That's something that they're trying.
and watch them like hawks.
Yeah.
Because if they're saying no to things for any reason other than some sort of health or safety or damage to the customer, then you need to shut them down. So there's a point where you just need to be very, very careful with this stuff, because otherwise we get these jumped up people who somehow believe they are everything. And they are nothing.
Other questions? Looking at a big audience out here.
Kevin, great job. Thanks for your presentation. Question for you in regards to that culture piece.
Yes.
In a multi-site situation, what are some of the biggest challenges besides culture in implementing operational excellence?
Yeah, you know, it's really big on global companies where, you know, there's a corporate wants this, the independent operations managers want something else. You know, so first of all, we got to wrestle with that, and so it means we have to be extremely consistent on what the benefits are, you know, and why we're doing this, and what the outcomes will be, and not just, you know, we're here to help, we're going to fix this, and this is why. Forget all that. So the homogenization of the message is key. Second point, teaching has to be rock solid. Meaning, I got to teach in different cultures, so the teaching has to be adapted for different cultures, different language, but also different cultures. But yet, you cannot go light on one subject here, and then another instructor goes hard on another instructor. So no, all your teaching has to be the same, and the comprehension of the teaching, you know, you got to make sure you engage and make sure people get it, because you can't let people perceive different messages in different planes. So you've got to test for that. Did they perceive my teaching correctly? Did they get the answer correctly? You've got to have the very practical knowledge, shop floor knowledge of how to do this, not make it too academic, but you really have to be rock solid in the message. And then the teaching, when I showed you IDEX 80 factories across the board, I mean, we did all hands-on management training, 3 days, in a huge conference, and then every instructor had such a strict script on what they could say, what stories they could tell, what they could draw on a flip chart, and they could not deviate. They couldn't skip something if they said, well, I don't think they need this, and they're just gonna, you have to be rock solid on that. Anyway,
Ricardo, what have you seen in country control?
Yeah, the way we approach that is that when we build what the central team try to establish is that actually we get together more than 200 leaders, cross region, cross business unit, and cross function, and with them is that we develop all those principles and practices. And then with these inputs, we also went out, we benchmark what our competition and our companies are doing. We went out to the academia, we see what the universities, the frameworks, and the theories, and then we combine those three. And that's the way that the manufacturing system was developed. So it was based on the voice of the internal client. It was not a push it up.
Other question? I have one. We talk standardization quite a bit. And I get into huge arguments sometimes, global standards versus site standards, regional standards. And then every once in a while it creeps back in, yeah, but there you OpEx guys go again, you killed innovation. How would you respond to that as OpEx guys?
Let me give you a good answer for that one, because this happened to me 2 weeks ago. It's gonna be anybody from healthcare, for any hospitals, anything like that? Oh, we're gonna have so much fun right now. So, I'm not gonna say the road, anything like that, because maybe you will know. So I'm driving in Miami on the road, and I see this big billboard outside on the road. Average time waiting at the ER is X amount of time. And then underneath it said, the best operational excellence in the industry. And I'm like, wow. So let's go talk about the ER for just 1 second so everybody's grounded, right? So if you go to the ER, just for the heck of the conversation, we're gonna have 3 steps, right? You have to check in, you have to go triage, and then you see a nurse. And then maybe you see a doctor, okay? So when we talk about standardization about this, what are we talking about? That little number that said 10 minutes waiting time. Does that mean from the time that I go in and I sit down and somebody take my card, and that from the time that I actually go ahead and see the nurse, from the time that I go to see the triage, or from the time that I actually go to see a doctor? So if you're asking me as a customer, I'm having this pain on my butt that is killing me and everything, what is the most important for me for the customer? You know, what is my CDQ? I don't care to give my card. I don't care to get my triage. I don't get to even see the nurse. What I care is how fast can you get me to see the doctor? I have asked, since I saw that, 7 different friends of mine in hospitals, and that little number that they put on the billboard, all of them is different. All of them, they told me, well, 10 minutes, what you see over there is from the time that you actually get to the hospital that they call your name to give the card. It doesn't make anything to me. The other one, oh, it's from the time from a medical staff see you. What does that mean? That actually, oh, they take your blood pressure. That doesn't mean anything to me. I'm still in pain. So the standardization should be the time that you put in that billboard, because you're giving me the wrong operational definition, should be from the time that I cross that door to the moment that a doctor will see me. But they don't say that. They don't put that. So, and then in top of that, they put you the best operational excellence. So, if you're from the standpoint of the hospital or from the standpoint from the patient, what is operational excellence for you? You know, if I am the patient, if I'm the customer, from your operational excellence, how fast would you treat my illness, and how effective do you treat my illness? That's operational excellence for me. So I don't think that little number is going to tell you, and then they don't give you all that. So think about that in your business. When we talk about what kind of metrics, or when we talk about what kind of standardization, talk to you about what does that mean to be operational excellence. What is it? You know, to be honest with you. And sorry, I just saw that a couple of weeks ago, and I was just like, really?
I asked Teresa to follow up. The real part I asked, though, was this issue, but we killed innovation because of these kind of things. How would you respond to that, Teresa? You're a business leader, transformation. Are we killing innovation?
Actually, I don't think that's the case at all. I mean, there are certain things that are minimum things that every company should do on a standardized basis across the globe. There's no, safety is one of those for Europe. We don't allow any innovation around that unless it is with the process owner. So there are incubators you can develop, you can have cells where you can think about improving safety processes, but it's never in a localized site. I just think there's a better way. I think this blue should really be green. I'm going to change it because that's what I think is better. There's no localized, there should be, and there's no localized control over that. There are other parts where I think the concept of operations excellence, continuous improvement, whatever, is quite aligned with innovation. It's just in a more controlled way. We're giving the opportunity for, I love the way one of my previous CEOs explained it. CI is a gift to the employee. We just don't view it that way because we think we're imposing it on them. But if we explain it the other way, they're able to be the most creative. They know the issues. They know what frustrates them. No employee says, I'd like to work on the worst process that adds the least amount of value to the customer. I would love to go home frustrated. No employee does that. I think so. Anyway. But if you give them the tool sets and say that, hey, you know the process. Now, you're not going to go randomly changing stuff. But you have a hand in actually designing the future state. I think that's innovation without calling it innovation. That's one thing. The other thing, I want to go back to something. I really worry about using the term best practice. It has a certain finality to it that I think is unnecessary and probably antithetical to our existence. Because if we really think it's best practice, we are out of the job. Which I don't know why the nomenclature even came about. It's better, maybe. It's better practice or good practices that we build on. But that is a great way of, I think Kevin, you talked about nomenclature, right? I mean, the language you use matters a lot. Words really matter. And I came from a belief that words really didn't matter, that actions speak louder than words and you're done with it. But from an employee standpoint, it doesn't get a lot of airtime from executives, and you just see these guys airdropped into the operation telling you how to change. Words really matter. What's in it for me is a very common thing that everybody goes through.
It looks like you got a thought on your mind from that.
I have a couple of thoughts. One, I disagree with your CEO. I don't think CI is a gift to an employee. I think CI is a gift from the employee to the business. And so I think about it completely the other way around in that respect. I also think that innovation is one of the jobs of businesses, and innovation by definition is an improvement. unless we're innovating to make things worse, which is possible. I have, by the way, seen a number of conferences recently on process automation and robotics, and I think it's wonderful that telecoms companies can put all this robotics in so that we can answer all the shit quickly. I just understand that. So my view is that innovation is just such an important process within everything else that's going on. And it's so linked to improvement that I just think the argument is a kind of daft argument.
So, no, I want to give a real practical example of probably what you're saying, but first I got to have fun with Angel. Angel, on that little word that says, did you notice that they say the word average wait time?
Yes.
Yeah. If I asked you to walk across a river and the average depth was 1 foot, would you want to do it? What about, especially an airplane overhaul and MRO, we don't care what the airlines don't care what, well, on average, we do a C-check on an aircraft in like 30 days or 8 days. What we care about is the longest one. Right? So we want to say your longest wait would be. But now back to the innovation side. Real good example. So we're teaching, like I said, these principles of extreme design, and one of them is called pitch. It says how do we, the principle is there has to be a physical binary way that lets you know if your value stream is on time. And let's take the office, because the office is hard. You get a bunch of people who don't know anything about flow, you know. So here we are teaching them. And we say, okay, great, we have to have a visual binary way, so we know that these engineers are doing engineering changes on time. That's the principle, right? Here's the principles. It has to be anticipated, binary, visual, and anticipated. So here's the innovation. Here's what they came up with. They're engineers, right? We gave them a Nerf gun. They came up with this, with a Nerf darts. And every time they finished an engineering change, they got to shoot their Nerf gun at a Velcro target, right? And to know if they were on time or not, we knew they should have, by between 10 and 12, they should have 4 quotes done. Yeah. So we just walked by the dartboard at noontime, and if there was 4 dots on the dartboard, we knew they were on time. And that's how we applied that principle. We let them innovate a way that was totally unique, that met the conditions of what pitch was. And so that's a really good way to be able to innovate. You know, so you give the principles and say, you know, you can't innovate what colors I want to paint the office, but you can innovate how I'm going to do pitch. Yep. You know, and give the Nerf gun. And this, other people have come up with, well, I want to raise a flag, you know, hoist the flag, you know, all kinds of stuff. That's where the innovation comes in, is we want you to innovate around how to apply these principles.
Yes, ma'am.
In all of your presentations, I can infer, but I would like to understand, that you probably have some sort of help with, or from HR or from the change management people, because we're talking about culture. Just wanted to understand what that partnership looks like, or is this taken on really like your lean or your operating license?
I would take that one. So when I did my first lean back in Pepsi, that I was, let's transform these facilities, the failures was so bad that my managers said to me, now you go and get certified in change management. And I got certified in 4 different methodologies. And from that day on, what now we do, we don't call it change management or as HR, because it's not their function. It's not, what is the change agent? No. So it's each of us who with the methodologies and processes, we fully embedded in the principles, in the processes, in the methodologies. And definitely, if you don't do that, you can have the more awesome manufacturing system, but probably in 6 months, 1 year, it will completely fail.
Peter? Yeah, I think it was Peter's one said that you should have 1 people person for every 300 employees, and never let them leave because they'll form a department. and so I don't think, I've never worked anywhere where HR actually of any use whatsoever when it comes to change management and those things. They're pretty useful at 1 or 2 other things, but it's not that. So if I'm recruiting and I'm looking for people, there's an assumption I make around toolkit, and that we do on the phone. We have a discussion about whether they know anything. And then when they come to interview, the only thing I interview for is change management skills. It's their ability to make change in any culture. That's all I'm interested in. And that's what drives your capability. And I've made some mistakes. along the line.
How you learn? You learn?
Yeah, because you get wooed by big toolkits and great MBAs and all that crap. But basically, it's do they understand people? Do they understand people in different cultures? And can they take people on a journey to make change? And that's what I care about. Generally, I get worried if HR get involved.
Yeah.
I'm keen on them being involved in my lean program currently because that's important to me to help them with some of their key operations like recruitment and things like that. I'm not particularly keen on them getting too bothered with us.
Now, when it comes to change management, let's like just pull the rug out from under everybody and say, here's the first thing we need to do about change management. Get rid of the word management.
Yeah.
All right, that's the first. It's an oxymoron, right? Get rid of the word management. How about we just call it understanding change? You know, let's just understand change because we don't manage anything. You know, there's a change curve. Yes. What are we trying to do? Simply reduce that curve. So we get from point A to point B being quicker. So what do we have to do? Well, we have to teach supervisors, well, people need to go through a change, and this is how that works. So they understand it. They have empathy for it. And they learn how to teach, you know, the tools to help them. But it's just, you know, understanding change. It's not a management kind of thought. And if you just think of it that way, you're going to find the paradigms just start back the way. Right? You know,
what a great way to finish up. Sometimes the simple messages are the best messages. Right? Keep it simple. Talking about stupid after that. Thanks, everybody. I really appreciate it.